I lost everything because of a lie. My best friend, the person I trusted most in the world, destroyed my life with one single accusation. I was humiliated, fired, and abandoned. But years later, the truth came out. And when it did, his perfect life crumbled in ways I never imagined. This is my story. I still remember the exact moment my life changed forever. It was a Tuesday morning, around 9 o'clock, and I was sitting at my desk in the accounting department of Henderson and Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm where I had worked for nearly 8 years. The sun was streaming through the tall office windows, and I was finishing up a report when my manager, Mr. Peterson, walked in with a strange look on his face. He asked me to follow him to the conference room. I thought maybe it was about a promotion or a new project. I had been working hard, staying late, taking on extra responsibilities. But when I walked into that room and saw the HR director, the company lawyer, and 2 security guards standing there, my heart dropped. Something was very, very wrong. Mr. Peterson didn't waste time. He said they had discovered a serious financial discrepancy. Money was missing from client accounts, thousands of dollars. And according to their investigation, all signs pointed to me. I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath my feet. I couldn't breathe. I tried to speak to defend myself, but my voice came out shaky and weak. I told them there must be a mistake. I would never steal. I had access to those accounts, yes, but I had never touched a single cent that wasn't part of my job. The HR director slid a folder across the table. Inside were bank statements, transaction records, and email threads. My name was all over them, but I had never sent those emails. I had never made those transfers. I was being framed, and I knew it. But no one believed me. They had evidence. They had proof. And the person who had provided most of that proof, the person who had reported the missing money in the first place, was my best friend Daniel. Daniel and I had been friends since college. We met during freshman orientation and became inseparable. We studied together, graduated together, and even ended up working at the same company. He was like a brother to me. We celebrated birthdays, went on road trips, supported each other through breakups and family problems. I trusted him with everything, and he had just betrayed me in the worst way possible. I was escorted out of the building that same day. My colleagues stared as I walked past their desks with a security guard on either side of me. Some looked shocked. Others looked disgusted. I wanted to scream that I was innocent, that this was all a mistake, but I couldn't. My throat was tight and my eyes were burning with tears I refused to let fall. Not there, not in front of them. I went home in a daze. My apartment felt cold and empty. I sat on the couch and stared at the wall for hours. I didn't eat. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there trying to understand how this had happened. How could Daniel do this to me? Why would he do this to me? The next few days were a nightmare. The company decided not to press criminal charges as long as I signed a settlement agreement admitting fault and agreeing never to work in the industry again. My lawyer said it was the best option. Fighting it would cost money I didn't have, and with the evidence they had, I would probably lose anyway. So I signed. I admitted to something I didn't do just to avoid going to jail. And with that signature, my career was over. Word spread fast. In our industry, reputation is everything. Within a week, everyone knew my name and what I had supposedly done. I applied to dozens of jobs, but no one would hire me. I was toxic. I was a thief. I tried reaching out to Daniel. I called him, texted him, even went to his apartment, but he wouldn't answer. The one time he did pick up the phone, he sounded cold and distant. He said he was sorry, but he had to do the right thing. He had to report what he saw. I begged him to tell me the truth, to explain why he was lying, but he just hung up. I realized then that he wasn't going to help me. He had thrown me away like I meant nothing. My savings ran out quickly. I couldn't pay rent. I had to move in with my older brother, Marcus, and his wife in their small 2-bedroom house on the other side of town. Marcus didn't ask many questions. He just gave me a place to sleep and told me to take my time figuring things out. But I could see the pity in his eyes. I could hear the whispered conversations he had with his wife late at night. They were worried about me. And honestly, so was I. I spent weeks in that house, barely leaving my room. I felt like a ghost. I had no job, no future, no friends. Daniel had taken everything from me, and the worst part was I didn't even know why. What had I done to deserve this? Had I offended him somehow? Had I taken something that was his? I replayed every memory, every conversation, every moment we had shared, trying to find a clue, but there was nothing. We had been close, we had been brothers, or so I thought. Months passed. I finally found work at a small grocery store stocking shelves at night. It wasn't much, but it was something. I kept my head down, avoided people, and tried to rebuild my life one day at a time. I stopped thinking about Daniel. I stopped wondering why. I just focused on surviving. But deep down, the wound was still there. The humiliation, the betrayal, the loss, it never really went away. I just learned to live with it. And then, 3 years later, everything changed. 3 years after I lost everything, I was still working at that grocery store. I had been promoted to a shift supervisor, which meant slightly better pay and a bit more responsibility, but it was nothing compared to what I used to have. Still, I was grateful. I had my own small apartment again, a quiet place where I could breathe and think. I had learned to accept my new life. It wasn't the life I had planned, but it was mine. I had let go of the anger, the bitterness, the need for answers. Or at least I thought I had. One evening, I was restocking shelves in the cereal aisle when I heard a familiar voice behind me. I turned around and there he was. Daniel. He looked different, older, tired. He was wearing an expensive suit, but his face was pale and there were dark circles under his eyes. For a moment, we just stared at each other. I didn't know what to say. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. I had imagined this moment so many times, imagined all the things I would say, all the questions I would ask. But now that he was standing in front of me, I felt nothing, just emptiness. He spoke first. He said my name quietly, almost like a question. I nodded. He asked if we could talk. I told him I was working. He said it would only take a few minutes. He looked desperate, so I agreed. We went outside to the parking lot. It was late, and the air was cool. Daniel leaned against his car and took a deep breath. Then he started talking. He told me he was sorry. He said he had made a terrible mistake. He said he had been the one who stole the money, not me. He had framed me to cover his tracks. I felt my chest tight. I had known it, of course. I had always known. But hearing him admit it out loud after all this time was like reopening an old wound. I asked him why. Why would he do that to me? Why would he destroy my life? He looked down at his shoes. He said he had been in debt, serious debt, gambling debt. He owed money to dangerous people and he was desperate. He saw an opportunity to take the money from the company and he took it. But when the company started investigating, he panicked. He needed someone to blame, and I was the easiest target. We worked in the same department. We had access to the same accounts. It was simple. He planted evidence, manipulated records, and pointed the finger at me. And because everyone trusted him, they believed him. I stood there, listening, feeling a strange mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to yell at him, to hit him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I had felt. But I didn't. I just asked him why he was telling me this now. He said his life had fallen apart. After I left the company, he got promoted. He moved up quickly, became a senior manager, made good money. He paid off his debts and thought everything was fine. But the guilt ate at him. He started drinking. His marriage fell apart. His wife left him and took their daughter. He lost his job because of his drinking. And now he was broke, alone, and miserable. He said he couldn't live with what he had done anymore. He needed to tell the truth. He needed me to forgive him. I looked at him for a long time. This man, who had once been my closest friend, now looked like a stranger. A broken, desperate stranger. I wanted to feel satisfaction. I wanted to feel like justice had been served. But I didn't. I just felt sad. Sad for him, sad for me, sad for everything we had lost. I told him I couldn't forgive him. Not yet, maybe not ever, but I appreciated him telling me the truth. I asked him if he was going to go to the company, to the police, and confess. He nodded. He said he was going to turn himself in. He said he wanted to make things right. I didn't know if I believed him, but I didn't have the energy to care anymore. I told him to do what he needed to do, and then I walked back inside the store. I didn't look back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the conversation in my head. Daniel had admitted everything. He had destroyed my life to save his own, and now his life was destroyed anyway. There was a twisted kind of irony in that. But it didn't make me feel better. It didn't undo the years of pain and humiliation. It didn't give me back my career, my reputation, or my trust in people. A few days later, I got a call from Mr. Peterson, my old manager. He said Daniel had come forward and confessed. The company was reviewing everything and they wanted to meet with me. I agreed. When I walked into that same conference room where I had been accused 3 years earlier, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. But this time, the atmosphere was different. Mr. Peterson apologized. The HR director apologized. The company lawyer apologized. They said they had made a terrible mistake. They offered me my job back, a settlement for the damages I had suffered, and a formal letter clearing my name. I sat there, listening to their words, and I felt nothing. No relief, no joy, no vindication, just exhaustion. I thanked them politely and told them I needed time to think. I left the building and stood outside in the sunlight, feeling the weight of 3 years lift off my shoulders. But it didn't feel like freedom. It felt like the end of something I could never get back. After the meeting with the company, I spent days thinking about what I wanted to do. They had offered me everything I thought I wanted: my job back, money, an apology, my reputation restored. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I wanted any of it. I had spent 3 years rebuilding myself from nothing. I had learned to live a simpler, quieter life. I had learned to let go of ambition and pride. And now, they were offering me a chance to go back to the world that had rejected me. I wasn't sure I wanted to return. I talked to Marcus about it. He listened carefully, the way he always did, and then he asked me a simple question. He said, "What do you want? Not what you think you should want. Not what people expect. What do you actually want?" I didn't have an answer, so I took a walk. I walked through the old neighborhood where Daniel and I used to hang out during college. I passed the coffee shop where we used to study for exams, the park where we played basketball on weekends, the bookstore where we spent hours browsing. It all felt so distant now, like a dream I had once had but couldn't quite remember. I realized that the person I used to be, the person who worked at that company and trusted people like Daniel, was gone. That version of me had died the day I was escorted out of that office, and I wasn't sure I wanted to bring him back. But I also knew I couldn't keep running from the past. I couldn't keep hiding in the shadows, pretending that what happened didn't matter. It did matter. It had shaped me. And now I had a choice. I could take the settlement, clear my name, and move on quietly. Or I could take the job, face the people who had judged me, and prove that I was stronger than the lies they believed. In the end, I decided to do something in between. I accepted the settlement but declined the job. I didn't need to prove anything to them. I had already proven everything to myself. I used the settlement money to go back to school. I enrolled in a certification program for project management, something I had always been interested in but never pursued. I studied hard, stayed focused, and slowly started building a new career. This time, I was in control. This time, I wasn't relying on anyone else's approval or trust. I was doing it for me. As for Daniel, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he did turn himself in. He faced legal consequences, lost what little he had left, and eventually moved to another state to start over. I didn't follow his story closely. I didn't need to. He was no longer part of my life, and I was no longer part of his. But one thing stayed with me. Something he said that night in the parking lot. He said, "I thought if I took the money, I could fix everything. But all I did was destroy the one person who actually cared about me." Those words haunted me, not because I felt sorry for him, but because they made me realize how fragile trust is, how easily it can be broken, and how hard it is to rebuild. I thought about all the people I had trusted in my life, my colleagues, my managers, my friends, and I realized that trust isn't something you give freely. It's something you earn and something you protect. Daniel had broken that trust, and it had cost him everything. But I had learned something too. I had learned that even when people betray you, even when the world turns against you, you still have yourself. And that's enough. Months passed. I finished my certification and started applying for jobs. This time I was honest about my past. I explained what had happened, how I had been framed, and how my name had been cleared. Some employers didn't believe me. Some didn't care. But eventually, I found a company that was willing to give me a chance. It was a small consulting firm, nothing like the corporate world I used to know. But the people were kind and the work was meaningful. I started as a junior project coordinator, and within a year I was promoted to project manager. I was building something again, something real, something mine. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. One afternoon, I was sitting in a cafe working on a project proposal when I saw a familiar face across the street. It was Daniel. He was walking slowly, head down, hands in his pockets. He looked even worse than the last time I had seen him, thin, worn out, defeated. For a moment, I thought about going over to him, maybe to check if he was okay, maybe to say something. But I didn't. I just watched him walk away, disappearing into the crowd. And I realized that I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel hatred or bitterness. I just felt distant, like he was a character from a story I had once read but no longer remembered clearly. I finished my coffee, closed my laptop, and headed home. The sun was setting and the sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink. I thought about how far I had come, how much I had lost, how much I had gained. And I realized that maybe, just maybe, everything had happened the way it was supposed to. Not because it was fair, not because it was right, but because it had taught me something important. It had taught me that you can survive betrayal. You can survive humiliation. You can survive losing everything. And when you come out the other side, you're not the same person. You're stronger, you're wiser, you're more careful with your trust. But you're also more compassionate, because you know what it's like to fall. And you know what it takes to get back up. 2 years after I started working at the consulting firm, I was thriving. I had built a solid reputation, earned the respect of my colleagues, and was managing some of the company's most important projects. My life had finally found a rhythm. I had a small circle of friends, a comfortable apartment, and a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I had let go of the past, or at least I thought I had. Then one day, I received an email that changed everything. It was from a journalist named Sarah Mitchell. She worked for a well-known online publication that focused on corporate fraud and workplace ethics. She said she had been investigating a series of financial crimes in the marketing and advertising industry, and my case had come up during her research. She wanted to interview me. At first, I hesitated. I had worked hard to move on, to leave that chapter of my life behind. Did I really want to dig it all up again? Did I want to relive the humiliation, the pain, the betrayal? But something inside me said yes. Maybe it was because I wanted people to know the truth. Maybe it was because I wanted other people in similar situations to know they weren't alone. Or maybe I just wanted to finally tell my side of the story. So I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe near my office. Sarah was kind and professional. She didn't treat me like a victim or a criminal. She treated me like a person. She asked me to tell her everything from the beginning, so I did. I told her about my friendship with Daniel, about the day I was accused, about the evidence that was planted, about losing my job and my reputation. I told her about the years of struggle, the loneliness, the doubt. And I told her about the moment Daniel confessed, and how even that didn't bring me the closure I thought it would. Sarah listened carefully, taking notes and asking thoughtful questions. She said my story was important. She said it highlighted a bigger problem: how easy it is for innocent people to be destroyed by false accusations, and how little protection they have. She said she wanted to write an article that would not only clear my name publicly, but also shine a light on the flaws in the system that allowed it to happen. I agreed to let her publish my story. A few weeks later, the article went live. It was titled, "Framed: How One Man Lost Everything Because of a Lie, and How the Truth Finally Set Him Free." The response was overwhelming. The article was shared thousands of times. People reached out to me on social media, through email, even at work. Some shared their own stories of being falsely accused. Others offered support and encouragement. A few even apologized, former colleagues who had believed the lies and turned their backs on me. I didn't know how to process it all. For so long, I had been invisible, forgotten. And now, suddenly, people knew my name again. But this time, they knew the truth. The article also caught the attention of Henderson and Associates, my old company. They released a public statement acknowledging their failure to properly investigate the case and apologizing for the harm they had caused me. They announced new policies to prevent similar situations in the future. It felt surreal. But what surprised me most was a message I received a few days after the article was published. It was from Daniel. He had read the article. He said he was sorry again. He said he understood if I hated him. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but he wanted me to know that he was trying to make amends in whatever small ways he could. He had started volunteering at a nonprofit that helped people with gambling addictions. He said it was his way of trying to give back, to prevent others from making the same mistakes he did. I didn't reply right away. I sat with the message for a long time, thinking about what forgiveness actually meant. Did it mean forgetting what he did? Did it mean letting him back into my life? Did it mean pretending the pain didn't exist? I realized that forgiveness didn't have to mean any of those things. Forgiveness, for me, meant letting go of the anger. It meant accepting that what happened was in the past, and that holding on to resentment was only hurting me. It didn't mean I had to trust him again. It didn't mean we had to be friends. It just meant I could move forward without carrying the weight of bitterness. So I replied. I told him I appreciated his honesty and his efforts to change. I told him I didn't hate him, but I also couldn't go back to the way things were. I wished him well, and I meant it. And then I closed that chapter for good. Life moved on. The attention from the article faded, and I went back to my quiet, steady routine. But something had shifted inside me. I felt lighter, freer. Like I had finally reclaimed the parts of myself that had been taken from me. I also realized something important. The betrayal had broken me, yes, but it had also forced me to rebuild. And in rebuilding, I had become someone stronger, someone more resilient, someone more aware of my own worth. I wouldn't have chosen this path. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I also wouldn't trade the person I had become, because I had learned that you don't need other people's approval to know your value. You don't need their belief to know your truth. You just need to keep going, keep growing, keep choosing yourself. And that's exactly what I did. 5 years after everything fell apart, I found myself sitting in a conference room once again. But this time, I was on the other side of the table. I was the one conducting the interview. The consulting firm I worked for had grown significantly, and I had been promoted to senior project manager. I was leading a team, mentoring junior staff, and helping the company expand into new markets. I had built a career I was proud of, a career based on integrity, hard work, and resilience. The person sitting across from me was a young man in his mid-20s, nervous and eager. He had applied for a junior position on my team. His resume was impressive, but there was a gap in his employment history. When I asked him about it, he hesitated. Then he told me the truth. He had been falsely accused of misconduct at his previous job. He had been let go without a proper investigation, and his reputation had been damaged. He had struggled to find work ever since. As he spoke, I saw myself in him, the fear, the shame, the desperation to be believed. I listened carefully, asked a few more questions, and then I made a decision. I hired him. After the interview, he thanked me, his voice shaking with relief. I told him something I wish someone had told me all those years ago. I said, "What happened to you doesn't define you. How you move forward does. You're going to be fine." And I meant it. That evening, I went home and sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. I thought about the journey I had been on. The pain, the loss, the betrayal, but also the growth, the strength, the redemption. I thought about Daniel wherever he was. I hoped he had found some peace. I hoped he had learned from his mistakes. But more than anything, I hoped he had forgiven himself, because I had finally forgiven him. not for his sake but for mine. I realized that holding onto anger and resentment was like carrying a heavy stone everywhere I went. It weighed me down, exhausted me, and kept me stuck in the past. Letting go didn't mean what he did was okay. It just meant I was choosing to move forward without that weight. I also thought about the people who had supported me along the way. My brother Marcus, who gave me a place to stay when I had nothing. My manager at the grocery store, who treated me with dignity when everyone else saw me as a criminal. Sarah, the journalist, who helped me reclaim my story. And all the strangers who reached out after reading the article, reminding me that I wasn't alone. I realized that even in the darkest times, there are people who see you, who believe in you, who lift you up. And those people are worth holding on to. As I sat there, a sense of calm washed over me. I had spent so many years running from the past, trying to forget, trying to prove myself. But now I didn't need to do any of that. I had made peace with what happened. I had accepted it, learned from it, and moved on. And in doing so, I had discovered something powerful. I had discovered that my worth was never tied to a job, a title, or other people's opinions. It was tied to who I was at my core, my honesty, my resilience, my ability to keep going even when everything seemed impossible. Daniel had taken a lot from me, but he hadn't taken that. The next morning, I woke up with a clear mind and a full heart. I went to work, led my team, and focused on the future. I didn't think about revenge or justice or fairness. I just thought about the life I was building, one day at a time, and that life was good. It was simple, steady, and mine. A few months later, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Daniel. Inside was a short note and a check. The note said, "I know this doesn't undo the damage I caused, but I wanted to repay you in whatever way I could. I'm working again, and I'm trying to make things right. I hope you can accept this as a small step toward that." The check was for the amount I had lost in legal fees and settlements all those years ago. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to tear it up, to send it back, to tell him that money couldn't fix what he had broken. But another part of me understood what this gesture meant. It wasn't about the money. It was about accountability. It was about him taking responsibility for his actions, even if it was years too late. I decided to accept the check, but I didn't keep it for myself. I donated it to a legal aid organization that helps people who have been wrongly accused and can't afford representation. It felt like the right thing to do, like closing the circle. I wrote Daniel a short reply. I told him I had received his letter and that I appreciated his effort to make amends. I told him I hoped he continued on his path of healing and growth, and I told him that I had moved on, and I hoped he could too. I never heard from him again. And that was okay. Because I realized that forgiveness and closure don't always come with neat endings or happy reunions. Sometimes they just come with acceptance, with letting go, with choosing peace over pain. As I look back now, I see the whole journey clearly. The betrayal, the fall, the struggle, the rebuilding, the redemption. It wasn't the story I wanted to live, but it was the story I needed. It taught me that you can lose everything and still find yourself. It taught me that betrayal doesn't have to destroy you. It can transform you. And it taught me that the people who hurt you don't get to define your future. You do. So if you're reading this or listening to this and you've ever been betrayed, humiliated, or falsely accused, I want you to know something. You are not what happened to you. You are not the lies people told about you. You are not the mistakes others made. You are the strength you found when everything fell apart. You are the courage you showed when you got back up. You are the grace you chose when you decided to move forward. And that is more powerful than any betrayal. That is more lasting than any revenge. That is the truth that sets you free. My name is Michael, and this is my story.